understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase. This is Sam Witch and Dill Pickle. My name's Sam. I study language and culture.
I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
And like always, I have my notes. I think Dillon's is on his computer. We've got our candle and we're ready to go. This is episode 60. Today, this recording is actually a snow day, so we've both been home working. And December 2nd, which means the holidays are here. We're in Advent. So today's episode 60, and we are talking about those phrases that I have no issue with, obviously. Dillon has no issue with, but I have heard out in the wild, I've heard some Christians take issue when people this time of the year say, Happy Holidays, or they write Xmas instead of Christmas. And we're going to talk about why that is flawed today. So today is all about the word holiday and Xmas because they're connected.
Right. So what have you been focusing on most recently?
What have I been paying attention to, focusing
on?
I've been excited for this question. Sky Cave Retreats.
Oh, okay.
Which is this place out west. You know this.
Yeah.
It's this place, I'm pretty sure it's out west, where you can go and some people spend a day, some people spend 3 or 5 days, seem to be popular, 3 days, 5 days, inside a cave where it is silent and it is dark. Mm-hmm. You're by yourself. There is a person who feeds you once a day who will come, and the door is unlocked, so you can leave at any time. But it's like there's no cell phone, there's no technology. It is just you. I think a couple toiletries you can have, like in the dark you can finagle with. That's just you, yourself, in the dark for 3 or 5 days or whatever you choose, whatever package you choose. And what I've been focusing on recently, I've spent an hour or 2 a day for the past couple weeks on their Instagram page, just scrolling person after person, because whenever a lot of people come out of this for 3 or 5 days and they take off the thing, I mean, it's really dark in the cave, but they also have an eye mask thing on. I don't know if they have it on the whole time. I don't think so. I think when they come out of the cave, because the light can be so blinding after so much darkness, they have that on so they can take it off when they're ready. And over and over and over again, these people come out and they record them, they post it on Instagram, they take off the eye mask and they cry about 2 things. Number 1, how beautiful everything was and how they didn't realize it before. Just everything. They hear birds, and it's a really beautiful location too. So it's just on this mountain with an overlook. They hear birds and they just see things it's so beautiful. How did I not notice before? And the second thing is they say over and over again, I mean, you have these tough military men, you have women, you just have, there's a 13 or 14-year-old also who did it for 3 days, just all kinds of different people. And they say, in the silence and in the darkness, I learned what really matters. And it's not all of the stuff that I thought mattered. It's not the work. It's nothing else. I learned that love is what matters. And that's over and over again, people say, and they're crying because everything's so beautiful. And it just takes 3 days of silence and darkness to know it. And another thing they say over and over again is, I knew it in my head before, but now I know it. I've experienced it. I know it. So I've been pretty obsessed with those videos. That's what I've been focusing on. If we didn't have children, I'd be on a plane so fast to do that. I just can't leave my life for 3 days right now. Maybe when they get older, I would love to do it, but not in that season right now.
Well, that season will come.
Yeah. Okay. What have you been focusing on, Dill Pickle?
The past week and a half, about 2 weeks maybe now, I've been focusing on this kind of like ancient custom that you can see across all cultures of when winter comes or when some type of change comes in the seasons, that people will bring that which still lives in the cold, so such as like evergreens, and they'll bring them
Mm.
into their house.
Yeah.
So like we decorated for Christmas at our house, our church decorated for Christmas, and sometimes you call it the hanging of the greens, right?
And why do they bring the thing that survives the winter into their house? Do you know?
So it goes back to a custom when there was no electricity. And so the idea that you would light candles and much more light, you would really amp up on keeping a lot of candles in the winter. And so that brought you light in the darkness. But then the evergreens reminded you that life, that everything's still dead, but that life still exists in some form. And
Mm.
that brought many people joy. Now
And they,
so there's the interesting question. Most people, both in their houses and in their places of worship, they no longer bring real greens in their house or real greens, evergreens in their churches or in their other types of worship houses of worship. It's artificial. It's artificial. And so I have been going back and forth with, is it the actual physical thing that matters? Is it the physical evergreen thing that really matters? Or is it a state of being?
both.
Yeah. So people are like, well, it shouldn't be artificial. It shouldn't be artificial. It should be real. That part of me would agree with them. And then the other part of me says, yes, and it's about a state of being and something that gets us there. So whether that's a real evergreen or it is an artificial evergreen, it's the state in which we are kind of living, the posture that we're living, and connecting that with a symbol, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's always living in the tension between what we want and what is realistic. Like the altar flowers, I would die on this hill.
Yeah,
They should be real.
right.
They should be real. The point of them is they should be real flowers. When we go to a cemetery, I feel like those should be real flowers. And acknowledging sometimes a church gets to a point where they have to cut the budget somewhere and real flowers can add up.
Right.
Sometimes you don't have sponsors for those real flowers. Sometimes the local flower place shuts down or whatever happens, and then you have to go to artificial, and it's living in that tension. It's not just throwing it out just because. It's not just saying, oh no, we're going to use artificial greenery just because it's easier, but also acknowledging, like, well, maybe we do need what's easier. Maybe
Well,
something's
also,
given, that's
yeah,
it.
and also paying attention to people's allergies. Some people have
Right.
allergic reactions to certain things,
Right.
and in a space that is supposed to be welcoming of all. Not that you just say, okay, well, we're not going to do it because someone might have an allergy, but if there's somebody in your community that is really deeply struggling with that, maybe you could have maybe a reduction of it, or maybe perhaps an
Yeah.
omittance of it totally.
Yeah.
But
Same with communion. Some people are like, it has to be wine. And you already know this. I know as a pastor, you would die on this hill. Grape juice should always be an option.
oh,
You
sure.
never know who's there that can't even have a sip of wine because it would
Yeah.
be a problem for them, or who's pregnant, or
Mhm.
who's a child. And like, I don't care if our kids have wine at communion, but some
Yeah.
people don't want that. You just never know. So yeah, it's always living in the tension of we are human with human constraints. And don't just say like, oh, who cares? It's nothing. The living thing matters.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah. So what I so yeah. So my reflection is that I think that it's very very fitting and a powerful connection that we need the darkness, and yet the darkness can have right alongside it something that is life giving or eternal, such as an evergreen. And so I've been thinking about that. And then this last thing, in connection to that, um, there's this Advent hymn called "People Look East," and it talks about setting a table and preparing your hearth, which is like something like a fireplace mantle or something, where you would usually put greenery, right? And so, in thinking about the season of like preparation and preparing, like we're preparing a table for a feast to come. And while we're preparing a table for a feast to come in this season of darkness, we're also adorning it with evergreens and candles, things that give us kind of hope in the darkness, and we can both balance those out. So that's what I've been thinking about. It keeps me kind of grounded and sometimes my spacey mind.
Yeah, I'm prone to existential spaciness, and a mantra that I have probably like every 5 pages in my notebook is live close to the ground, live close to the ground, constantly reminding myself to live close to the ground. The first thing that I do when I'm feeling disembodied or like spacey or existential is I start eating a lot of vegetables. You already know this, but I start eating a lot of vegetables. In the summertime, I'll go outside without shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people who literally live close to the ground. Like Liz Gilbert talks a lot about how she'll just go and lay in the dirt
Mm-hmm.
and let the anxieties of whatever's happening just go over her and travel over her, because nothing can get you when you live close to the ground. Anyway, if that's a little woo-woo for you, let's move on. But
No. But I think let me just say this: there is something to that, though. I'm getting back to the more like physical or whatever. Like I think of like a lot of people like during Advent, during the 4 weeks of Advent, people will make their own candles. They'll get wax, they'll get wicks, and they'll make their own candles. It's a very tangible, yeah. And
visceral.
they'll go out into a forest or the woods and they'll clip greens. It's a very, very earthy connectedness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's what you're focusing on, because another thing I've been focusing on, anytime I'm triggered by anything, I know it's because, oh, I have healing to do there. What is that? I am so triggered by anybody who has a spirituality that's focused in the mind. I'm so triggered by it. And all I can do is say, okay, I was there once too, and just allow them to have that and recognize I see it everywhere. As people move through stages of spiritual maturity, they eventually come to a more embodied, earthy, fleshy thing. They start gardening, they start making things, they start hugging their loved ones more. Like all that, whatever it is for them, it becomes embodied. But I'm very triggered by mind spirituality, by I'm just going to meditate all day, I'm just going to think about things, and it's because it's present in me, right? Because I'm a heady person. But so it's interesting you're talking about all this earthy stuff, because that's what I have to return to over and over again, is the ground, is the body, is visceral tangible senses. Anyway, are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so holiday and Xmas. Holiday literally means holy day. So let's just start there. When somebody says happy holidays, we need to acknowledge that, number one, there are many valid religions on this earth. So, and with many of them have major feast days, holidays around this time of the year. So when we say happy holidays, that's what we mean. But also, even within Christianity, we need to remember that Christmas Day is not the only holiday this time of the year. So saying happy holidays brings in, there's Epiphany right around the corner. There's Christmas, but also the first day of Advent. Name some others. I know there's more.
Well, there's smaller ones. I mean,
December days.
Yeah, December 26th is the Feast of Saint Stephen. And
the 28th is the
28th is the Holy Innocents. The 27th is the Feast of Saint John. So there's, which is actually interesting because December 27th, the Feast of Saint John, is our church is the patron saint is Saint John. And so his feast day always falls in the Christmas season and the 12 days of Christmas. So, some people, especially people who are not the most familiar with a more liturgical or a more church calendar centric tradition. Liturgical, yeah. They're probably only knowing that there's Christmas, and those smaller ones they either know nothing about or they know very little about them.
But if you know anything about church history and Christian history, saying happy holidays is perhaps more appropriate, unless it's Christmas Day and you say Merry Christmas. But it's a whole spectrum of things, right? It's a whole liturgical season. It has been for a majority of church history. In medieval England, holy days, or these holidays, they were specifically feast days, saint days, and this is important, times when work was forbidden. Over time, holiday has come to mean just a day of festivity, and it kind of dropped that religious thing in secular culture, not in religious culture, but in secular culture it has. By the 14th, 15th century, holiday in English just meant time off work in general, just time off work. And the British still say, instead of saying, oh, I'm on vacation, they say, I'm on holiday, because it's time off work. It's kind of like vacation. Holiday is kind of like a time of to feast and to rest and to not work. So it's a word about three things: rest, ritual, and religion. Some people only recognize holiday as rest now, meaning no work, but it's all those things. Which kind of introduces, do you have anything else to say about holiday? That one's really plain and simple, but I think it's important to say.
No, but I think that a lot of times we'll say like happy holidays because we send out a lot more cards during the winter holidays. Not just Christmas, not just Christmas and Epiphany and the small little feast days in between the 12 days of Christmas, but also, the Jewish people are celebrating Hanukkah. There is the winter solstice, so the idea of a turning of the seasons. We have Kwanzaa. There is a lot of other winter religious holidays that are seen and need to be respected and have dignity. But also, so we think about all the winter holidays when we say happy holidays or something like that, right? But very rarely do we look at that with spring holidays. There is a lot of, it's important also to use perhaps the general phrase happy holidays, meaning happy holy days in the spring, because not only is Easter happening, but also Passover is happening. The Muslim tradition also has a spring. The Hindu tradition religion has spring holidays. And Easter is not, once again, the only day either. We have
but we don't say happy holidays during that time of the year. I think it's because it's not as commercialized, right? Because where do you hear happy holidays?
That's the beauty of it.
Where do you hear people saying happy holidays? It's mostly when you're checking out at the store. Oh, happy holidays.
Sure.
Right? But you're not really buying a lot of Easter, I guess candy, but otherwise you're not buying nearly to the degree we do this time of year.
No. That's so true. That's so true. But it's also important to maybe when and if you're saying something in the spring to also be mindful that there's more there's more than just Easter, and Easter is a part of something very greater, and those other spring holidays of other religions.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Xmas. Oftentimes people will write Xmas. I haven't heard this as much as like people getting mad about happy holidays, but I've heard it once in a while, like Xmas, right Christmas. Christ is the reason for the season. I've seen bumper stickers that have Xmas and they cross it out and write Christmas. It's like, don't.
Or it says, or they'll have keep Christ in Christmas. And by taking the X out, they're literally taking out Christ in its most ancient form,
which is such a misunderstanding, right?
It's almost, hold on. I want to say this, and I hope I don't offend anyone in our listening or viewing audience, but when I see things like that, maybe I shouldn't say this, but
it gives Christianity a bad name.
Not only does it give Christianity a bad name, but it's like anti-intellectual. It is really like, I'm just going to say it, and forgive me for saying it, but when I see things like that, I think like,
nothing.
You look so dumb.
Stupid.
You look so stupid. I mean, you have no idea what you're saying. You're actually taking the very thing that you're saying out of that which you're saying. Does that make sense?
Oh, we're about to make it make sense. Yeah.
Okay.
So the X, so remember, we have a whole episode on what Christ means, but Christ is the Greek not translation, but transliteration, meaning it's a whole new word because it didn't exist in the Greek. This concept didn't exist, from Messiah. What does Messiah mean in Hebrew? It means the anointed one. Who is the anointed one? The king, the emperor, whoever's in charge gets anointed with oil, right? So we get this word Christos in Greek, right? The first Greek letter of this word Christ in Greek, it looks like an X. It's called a chi, right? So that's why we do it. And there's this symbol. You've probably seen it in a lot of churches. I know our church has it. If you've ever seen that big P with the X underneath it, where it's like the P and the X together, because the second letter of this Greek word Christ is that big P, which is called a rho. So the chi rho is a symbol. Again, that big P with the X, they're like
And it's not
each other.
it's not a churro like the dessert. Sorry, I just had to.
Yeah,
That was
an
old joke from seminary.
So whenever we say Xmas, now a long time ago, and I'm going to get into the history in a minute, but many, many centuries ago, early Jesus followers, they used this symbol. The X was really important. It meant Christ, right? It's like the way we use initials. Like I could sign my name S. Bise if I wanted to, D. Epler, right? It's almost like an initial. Well, I guess it essentially is an initial, but they would use this. So all of that is to say, Xmas means Christ Mass, right? Like it's not taking the Christ out. It's actually just going back to an older form of writing it. And we associate today the ultimate Christian symbol as the cross, which I have a necklace with a cross on that I wear sometimes. I'm not against it. I say this all the time, but it's actually kind of really weird. And I think Jesus would be against it. It'd be like us wearing a syringe or an electric chair, because it was like the cross was a tool of murder, or like a noose. It'd be like if I wore a noose around my neck, like a rope tie. Like it's kind of weird and like what's the word? Violent. It's violent, but we've really done something to it. But before the cross was the ultimate symbol, this Cairo, this big P with the X underneath, right? This Cairo symbol was the Christian symbol. In the second and third centuries, it was this discrete way to mark things like tombs of Jesus followers who had died, churches or like homes where people were meeting, which later can be known as churches, community writings and texts, some of which we now find in our Bible. If they were in circulation, if they were for Jesus following communities, they would have this Cairo symbol, this X. But hold on really quick. This is really important. This was used because if they used a cross, which I'm not even sure if that was in their realm of thinking, because many people were crucified at that time, right? But if they used a cross, the Romans would have been like, what is this, right? But this Cairo symbol, the Romans didn't know. So they could mark things without it drawing too much Roman attention. And that's really important. Okay, go ahead.
Also, you start to see this symbol of the X and the P pointing to Christ, pointing to Jesus. You also see it in the 9th, 10th, and 11th century, where you start to see the church year forming a little bit more formally, and you start to see it on the vestments, meaning the clothing, or the paraments, meaning the hanging decorations in the church. You start to see these symbols on what the priests and bishops and deacons would wear. So the stalls and the chasubles and the hanging things from the lectern and the altar and the baptismal font, you start to see decorations in the church with certain colors with this symbol on it. That and the symbol of, we'll do this at a different thing, but this symbol was also deeply connected to that of the fish. So you will see this symbol either on top of or below or next to a fish. They were the two biggest symbols pointing to Jesus the fisherman, and then the kind of monogram or the kind of symbol of Christ in the X and the P from the Greek letters. And so you start to see this like as the church very early on, but then as the church evolves in its kind of decor, you see this as almost the primary symbol.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about why and how that happened, right? So in the 4th century, Constantine, who is often credited with formalizing Christianity and turning it into a unified religion and institutionalizing it, which can be very bad, right? And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but also we probably wouldn't have it if that didn't happen. It was just so scattered. So, or not unified, right? There's all kinds of things. Anyway, pros and cons to that. But in the 4th century, Constantine, the story goes, it was the night before a battle, I think in the year 312 of the Common Era. It was the night before a battle, and he had this vision, right? This is the famous vision where he saw a sign in the sky, and it's often described as this Cairo sign. Some scholars say it could have been the cross. That's unlikely, though, because a cross was not, this is me talking, I think that's unlikely because the cross was not this symbol of Christianity quite yet, right? So most people say he was described as the Cairo, right? And this vision was accompanied by the words, "In this sign, conquer." So he ordered his soldiers to put this Cairo symbol on their shields, and then he won the battle, right? And then this is why he embraced Christianity, and he ended the persecution of Christians. And he said, hey, all of you leaders, come over here. Let's figure this out. You get the creeds, right? The rest is history. But this really transformed the Cairo symbol from something that had to be hidden from the Romans and something that could be used to label tombs and churches and texts for that community kind of in secret. And it became this like public emblem of Christian power. And by the 4th century, it appeared on coins, banners, and military gear. And then later on in the church, like priests and pastors and deacons started wearing this symbol. So you see it both in the church, but also imperial power, which if you have been listening to this podcast, you know I am very interested in that merging, and I find it very problematic. Even in our town, when we drive around and I see like an American flag with a gun on it, or I saw somebody who had a hat or a sweater or something the other day, and it was a cross, but it was a cross made in with swords, where it's like, dude, you missed it. You missed the point. You missed the mark there. And unfortunately, most of our nation, I think, has missed the point there. We're still doing it, what Constantine did, which is Jesus did not fight. He willingly died on the cross because he was showing people better to die at the hands of this violence than to contribute to this violence. But then it only took a couple centuries, 200 or 300 years, and boom, Constantine uses this symbol to win a battle and then says, hey, let's put this on our military. I mean, if Jesus would have known that he was going to start a movement and there was going to be a symbol called the Cairo, which is the first 2 letters of Christ in Greek, right? They were going to use this symbol as like the symbol of the movement he started without even really knowing it. And then later on, it was going to be on Roman military gear, the very government who killed him. We really messed it up. We really messed it up, and it didn't take us long. And we've just kind of been on that path ever since. Wild to me, insanity to me. I don't know how people, I'm going to speak in absolutes. I don't personally understand how people who don't know anything about the early church, the early Jesus followers, why are you even Christian? What about current Christianity does it? And I know that people could make very good arguments, but for me, I didn't get it until I went back to the first 2 or 3 centuries. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the value. It made no sense to me until I went back and started studying the history. Thoughts?
No, I think that's great. I'm thinking that almost 90% of the time, I get up in our rather nice, historic, beautiful pulpit at our church, right? And I at least read the gospel from there. Sometimes I'll preach from there. And I notice almost every week, I try to take notice to it, that when I climb those steps and go up there, at the top in the arch, in the apse, there is a Cairo.
Yeah.
A mosaic of the Cairo, and it's right there. It's right front. It's right center. It's pointing back to this Greek origins of the church, centered on Christ, and yet it sometimes is messy. It has this messiness, which is interesting because on the other side of the Cairo is a circular mosaic of a lamb with a kind of flag going through it, with a red and white flag that says, "The Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." right? This idea of a lamb going to the slaughter, and this connection between empire and going to try to change the world in a new way willingly. It's just, it has a lot of connotations there, just in that one little area of our little church in a small little town in Pennsylvania. So
Yeah. And meaning is found, again, we started this episode by talking about living in the tensions of things, and meaning is found living in the tension. You're a fundamentalist if you throw it all away, and you're a fundamentalist if you're just like, nope, nothing bad has ever happened at the hands of Christianity. It's like, no.
right.
So if you're someone who's like, well, in the 4th century, Constantine kind of ruined it because he put this beautiful symbol of peace and put it on military gear and Roman banners. So why even bother? That's
Yeah.
as much of a problem as being someone who's like, Christianity is the best. It's always been the best. It's never done harm. It's just wonderful. And it's exactly what it should be. Where it's like, that's also problematic. You know nothing, right?
I do,
Both of
yeah.
those
So
are a problem.
yeah, so I do think it would be kind of interesting. So for instance, when you're talking about Xmas, I mean Christ Mass, right? It would be interesting that if you were in a church such as ours to start off maybe a Christmas sermon with saying Happy Xmas and see how it goes. See
Yeah.
how it goes. A little bit of tension there, right? And then point to the very thing that's proclaimed in art on our wall. And can you
There you
see
go.
where,
Maybe you have your Christmas sermon. Did you
can
write
you
it yet?
see can you see where my mind's going? No, I didn't write it yet, but sorry, our dog is barking. And see that the very thing that we say that we're against is the very thing that we have our walls adorned with. you know?
Yeah.
Um,
The older I get, the more I want. I think it's important to be against things sometimes, but
oh,
there's
sure,
there's
absolutely.
something deeply. I think of the new. I think of Mamdani, the new New York City mayor elect, soon to be, and his campaign was ran, and we haven't seen this in a long time. His campaign was ran primarily on what he is for. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I believe. Here's what I promote, right? Instead of who he's against, what he's against, all the problems. I feel like our world, and it's good to know what the problems are, but I feel like we've become so like, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem, instead of people saying,
Mhm.
well, here's a couple that I could fix, I can contribute to fixing, and that's where my energy is going. And I just more and more want to be somebody who's for things rather than against them. And I've been talking for so long that I forget. Somehow related to what you just said.
That's you're delaying a bit.
Still? Oh,
What's that?
yeah, you froze too. Anyway, I forget what you were saying before I started talking about being
Oh,
for
and I was just
things.
letting you know that there for a couple seconds you were delayed.
With the whole thing that I said.
A little bit, yeah.
All I was saying is I think it's important to be for things. Right. I more and more I like that energy of being for things rather than against everything. But I can't
Yeah,
remember
and
why I said that. Well, go ahead.
you connected that to people being against saying Xmas instead of
Oh, right.
Christmas,
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
you
Yes.
connected it to Mondani,
Right. Yeah.
the newly elected mayor of New York City. That
Who?
he's for,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes. Now I remember why. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for hanging in there with us. So, yeah, I think that instead of people just hearing Xmas or Happy Holidays and being against it, how about just taking a couple minutes to figure out what are these terms before we're against something? How about we look into it a little bit and realize, oh, that's actually I'm for it, right?
Also, yeah. So also just a kind of an American twist to this. Also, just as this is going to come off snarky, and I don't mean it this way, but just a little bit of like a history lesson for like us, is that we live in a nation that has what I think is a beautiful constitution that allows people the free exercise to be able to practice a religion or not practice a religion, and a clause in the Constitution that states that the government won't promote a certain religion. Um, and so when we're saying that it only can be one way, or ours is better than yours, in an American context, the very nature of including all people, people of faith and people that don't see that they have a specific established faith, at least, um, a way of including people would be to include that everyone might be having a holiday or a holy day experience. And so to say happy holidays or happy holy days is not a problem. It's including everyone, just like the Constitution includes everyone, both and. And if you say Xmas, do, do it in a way that's educational and showing that that's actually going back very deeply to the roots where our Christian faith has come from. And
Right.
so don't fight against something and make yourself look foolish, because you think that the Christian word, or the English word Christ, is the only way, because you're wrong.
There you have it. Anything else to say?
No, I think this was a good one. This was lovely.
Yeah. Well, we have more episodes coming in the weeks to follow, but happy holidays and Merry Xmas and stay curious.
Stay curious.